Good afternoon. The Design Review Board Design Review Board 2 public meeting of September 25th, 2008 is called to order. Please refrain from talking amongst yourselves during the meeting, and please turn off or put on vibrate all cell phones and pagers. If you need to talk, please leave the meeting room. Anyone who wishes to speak, including applicants, is asked to completely fill out one of the speaker's cards provided at the table by the front door and submit it to staff. You will be called to present a case or speak on any specific item as desired. Anyone who wishes to be re-noticed about a project must completely fill out one of the postcards provided at the table by the front door and submit it to staff to receive notice of subsequent meetings. Current DRB agendas are available by calling our DRB hotline at 818-548-3171 or by visiting our website at www.ci.glendale.ca.us. A handout describing the procedures of the meeting, possible board decisions, and DRB reconsideration and appeals is available at the table by the front door. Please note that appeals must be filed within either 7 or 15 calendar days of the DRB decision date, depending on the application. The case planner will announce the length of the appeal period with each case. The chairperson may reorder agenda items at his or her discretion. Roll call. Mr. Carter?
Present.
Ms. Friedman?
Here.
Mr. Gergos?
Here.
Mr. Zarifian?
Here.
And Mr. Malikian?
Here.
Report regarding posting of the agenda. The agenda for this meeting was posted on the bulletin board outside City Hall at or before 5 p.m. on September 18, 2008. Oral communications. Is there anybody in the audience that wishes to speak on an item not a part of the agenda? Okay, seeing none, we can turn to the review calendar.
Okay. Any staff announcements?
Actually, we have two. Two of the cases we'd like to continue. The case at 1464 Stanley Avenue. The applicant actually has requested that the planning department postpone the hearing to October 23rd. And then also 228 Irving Avenue was not properly noticed. And so that case will be continued to October 9th.
I have one question, if I may.
Sure.
On the not posting, I'm always interested because it's a tender subject with neighbors and stuff. Do we know why the property was not posted? Did we fail to inform them, or did the sign get lost, or?
I don't know the intimate details about this project. Just from the basic information, it looks like they would be required to do the new noticing requirements that are now 8 months or so old. And in picking up the application, we give them a packet of what to do to post the sign as well as the mailing labels. It's public noticing packet. Aside from that, I don't know what exactly happened.
Okay, so in this situation, is it possible that it was a failure of the applicant to post it?
It appears that it probably was, although I don't want to say that with certainty.
Yeah, and just in general, from what I've been told when this happens, because we always ask about what's happened, it's always important to us if a case is delayed for whatever reason. And we always ask our planners, was the posting requirement properly requested, and was the applicant properly notified and reminded? And typically the answer we get back is yes.
Thank you. I only raise it because in the neighborhoods there's always sort of a little conspiratorial bent, and I must admit that I was one of those conspiratorial minds. So I do like to clarify it. Thank you.
Thank you.
The city clerk actually goes out the day after a notice is supposed to be posted to make sure that it was in fact properly posted.
Well, I'm going to move a couple of items to the top. We're going to go through the minutes really quick, and then I'm going to move the last item, which is the 2 PDR 2008-040A before the Cumberland Road, because one of our board members are going to be recusing themselves, and we want to make sure that we hear comments on the last project that we're going to review. So as far as the minutes, do we have any comments or anything, so we can do that really quick? And
I think they were okay. The two that were mailed out and this one, right?
Right.
Are we all at once or one at a time?
Yeah.
Okay, then do we have a motion to,
You know what, if I will move adoption of the minutes of a board meeting Thursday, August 28th, and I'd like to do them separately because there were some absences.
okay,
So I'm moving August 28th.
okay?
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, a motion was made to approve August 28th, 2008 minutes. This will be a roll call. Mr. Carter?
Yes.
Mr. Zarifian?
Yes.
Ms. Friedman?
Yes.
Mr. Geragos?
Yes.
Mr. Malikian?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, for August 14th, Mr. Carter and Ms. Friedman were absent, so I would like, if you guys are okay with it,
I think it
a
was
motion
fine.
in a
I
second.
make a motion we approve that minute.
I'm sorry, which
August
minutes were
14th?
those?
This is August 14th.
August
I
14th.
make a motion to approve the minutes for August 14th.
Is there a second?
You need to second? No.
I can't. Sorry.
Okay, a motion was made to approve the minutes of August 14th, 2008. Roll call. Mr. Geragos?
Yes.
Mr. Zarifian?
Yes.
Mr. Carter?
Abstain?
Ms. Friedman?
Abstain.
Mr. Malikian?
Yes.
Motion carried.
And Thursday, July 17th, Mr. Carter, you were absent, but Ms. Friedman, you were, so if you guys are okay with it.
I make a motion we approve the minutes.
Is this of the 17th?
17th.
Yes.
Let me just look at them really quickly because we just got them.
Okay.
Okay, that's fine.
I make a motion we approve the minutes for Thursday, July 17th.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion was made to approve the minutes for July 17th of this year. Roll call. Mr. Geragos?
Yes.
Mr. Zarifian?
Yes.
Mr. Carter?
Abstain?
Ms. Friedman?
Yes.
Mr. Malikian?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, thank you. Moving on, 2 PDR 2008-040A. We don't have any cards for that, so I'm assuming if we have cards, I'll let
I know I put a card up there.
you did.
Yeah, I think it was only one.
You know what? I have it.
Did it get mixed?
Yes, I mixed.
Sorry.
Yes. I apologize. Everything automatically went to Cumberland, so.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and member of the board. As you stated, the case is case 2-PDR-2008-040-A, located at 567 Caleb Street. The property is located in the Brockmont neighborhood, which is one of our Woodlands neighborhood. The property is currently developed with a three-story house and has a double frontage lot. Caleb Street actually wraps around the property at the front and at the rear of the site. The subject lot is approximately 11,600 square feet, and the proposed project by the applicant is to construct a two-level deck totaling 857 square feet, as well as an expansion of the existing deck that is currently attached to the house. The deck will follow the contour of the lot at the rear. The site where the deck will be constructed is currently occupied by natural vegetation, which will be removed. Again, the construction of the deck as well as the existing house will not produce a lot coverage that exceeds what we would allow by code, as the lot is pretty sizable. The deck will be treated to match the existing house in terms of the color as well as the texture. The surface will be treated with stucco, and wrought iron will be provided to match the wrought iron that exists on the other decks and balconies on the structure right now. The purpose of the deck construction is to provide some usable outdoor space. As you can see, the lot is quite steep. Therefore, the construction of this project will provide the needed necessary outdoor space for this residence. Staff, generally the deck construction meets the intent of the zoning code as well as the single-family guideline and analysis. Staff therefore recommends approval of this project with conditions. These conditions include lowering the height of the decks would further enhance the appearance of this property, which will reduce the potential impact to the adjoining properties and eliminate some unnecessary stairs. As you can see in the design, there's quite a number of stairs leading to the different level of the deck. There's deck A and deck B, and as well as the expansion of the existing deck closest to the house. The second condition is that the deck should be treated differently with different materials other than the house, as to separate its mass from the mass of the house. And the third condition is that additional landscape should be provided around the deck as to conceal and soften the appearance of this project. And we are requesting that a professionally prepared landscape plan be provided so that the plant palette will be consistent with hillside development and to ensure that they will thrive in that situation. In terms of site planning, the overall site planning is appropriate as the proposed project will follow the downslope topography of the lot. The decks will be situated at the rear of the lot behind the existing single-family residence. This is the most logical location since there is no usable open outdoor space available due to the sloping topography. While the size of the combined decks is atypical, being at 857 square feet, the proposed decks will follow the contour of the hill. Mass and scale. The deck's massing and scale were addressed. However, the mass of the house is further exaggerated, as stated earlier, since the deck will be designed to match the house. The deck appears to be an extension of the house, and the house appears more massive depending on a person's vantage point. One solution to address this is to treat the decks differently from the house, as recommended previously, which includes using different materials. Building design and details. The design of the deck is simple and attempts to match the style of the house in the use of materials and color. However, treating the decks differently from the house may be more appropriate. As proposed, the decks will look like an extension of the house, making the house appear more massive. And that concludes my presentation. The applicant, Chris Compton, is in the audience to answer any question you may have regarding this project.
Okay, thank you very much.
I have a question for staff. Okay. Just one question. It's not an issue, but just for the sake of consistency, I thought that in the new staff reports we get, we're from now on going to have the year of construction. So I just wanted to point that out. I don't think that this report has that.
You're correct. I apologize for that.
Brad, I just had a two-part question, just a clarification. This would be considered an accessory structure, right?
Yes.
And there doesn't seem to be a separation between the two decks, so wouldn't they be considered conjoined, thereby exceeding the max height for an accessory structure?
Well, while this project is considered a structure, a deck is allowed to be attached to a house. It's not livable.
No, I'm just wondering if you had two decks, I mean, as this one is, they're attached, you wouldn't take it from the lowest part of the lowest deck to the highest part of the upper deck? Since they're connected?
No, that question came up early in the review process. I approached the zoning administrator about the same concern, and she stated that...
I'm really curious how they're doing, because I would like to know.
Yes, she stated that this would be considered, based on the proposed project, would be...
How did she treat the height, though? What were they considering the height?
At each separate
At each
level.
point, separate
yes.
level?
Mhm.
So it didn't matter that they were connected? Okay, that's good to know. I didn't know we could do that.
And I just have a question. several times you remarked that because it's the same template as the house, it appears to add mass to the whole entire project, and there are recommendations and discussions about treating it differently. Were any of these approaches discussed with staff and with the applicant?
We had meetings with the applicant, and that discussion came up, and that was suggested.
But were there any examples offered by staff or the applicant about how that would actually be done?
The specific in terms of what the deck may turn out to be in terms of using a material other than stucco was not reviewed by staff, even though the idea was shared with the applicant.
Okay, thank you. I think it's a good idea. Maybe we should discuss it.
I have one other question. I don't know if this is a question for staff or for the applicant, but we did notice when we were there that what appeared to be drainage pipes going down the side of the house, draining onto the hill. So I don't know if you saw that, or if the applicant could speak to that, maybe? Because I don't think that that's allowable by code, but maybe you can clarify that.
Okay. Christopher Compton?
Hi, good evening. I'm Christopher Compton. I'm the architect and applicant for the project here. I can offer some clarification to a number of the questions that you had. I can do it immediately, or I can just give you an overall view of the project, whatever you prefer.
If you can just go ahead and answer it.
The house was built in 1982, and the question of the drainage is that there are exposed pipes out there, primarily from erosion of the hillside. The pipes are all closed at this point, storm drainage as well as sanitary drainage, and part of our project will be to mitigate that as the project develops. Where you see exposed pipes is generally in the area where the project's going to be placed.
So you won't, so is there water flushing through those pipes now?
Yeah.
Okay, but it won't be after you're finished with the
No,
project?
we're going to continue to use the pipes. They'll just be more buried, I guess, is the right way to place it.
Is that, well, I'll ask staff after your presentation.
Well, there's a sewer, and the sewer is on the low side of Caleb Street. It drains downhill. So those are exposed sewer pipes.
I meant the pipes that are draining actually onto the hill, on the back of the house.
There shouldn't
There's
be any
white-
storm drainage dumping out onto the surface.
White PVC pipes running down.
That's what they look like, but I'm suspicious that you saw pipes and they were drainage pipes, but I also believe that they're attached to other elements on the site. That is, we're not draining, it's not our intent, nor is it expected that we would be draining onto the side of the hill. That would create erosion that's inappropriate for the site.
That's all I wanted to be sure of.
Sure.
Thanks.
Okay. Let me just quickly go into a summary of the project. I think we have worked closely with staff in terms of looking at the project, looking at the different conditions that exist there. It's a difficult site and a difficult placement of the house. It's a very large site in terms of square footage. The house was built in 1982, and I assume at that point it followed all codes and zoning requirements and guidelines. Unfortunately, as time has gone by, the need, particularly with the current owner who's been there for 7 years, to have some sort of outdoor place with the outdoor space that they could basically become more involved with what the landscaping is in the backyard, became more and more of an issue. Initially, when the owner bought the property, there was a deck that was built out there. To his knowledge, it was not permitted, and he removed it on his own in order to mitigate any inappropriate construction on the site. That happened a number of years ago, so there's no per se. There is some remnants of that in a stairway that runs down the side of the property, but it's not a key element of our particular proposal at this point. We did talk to staff, and you did ask a very relevant question about what alternatives were offered to us. Now, and I agree directly with staff that, yes, it was discussed that there could be other options. We did not entertain any specific variations in the design. As the designer for the project and also working with the owner, as well as a general feel for what's there, we went with what we feel is a better solution, which is to integrate the design and to allow it to have the same characteristics as the house. The specific colors are not critical to the design. They do not necessarily enhance it in one particular way, nor do we have a very strong opinion as to what should be there, but we do feel it's consistent and that it does not, in fact, make the house seem more massive, primarily because the different vantage points and vistas that are created for the house really don't let you see the whole thing at one time, unless you are far away or on another vista point, let's say across the valley, or across the canyon, you might have a different point of view. But from the ground, from the front of the house, from the back of the house, from the low point of the hill, from the adjacent properties, you tend not to see the whole thing at one time, so I don't think that's a major issue. The steel railings that are there, again, rather than integrate a different characteristic to the property or to the site, we went with the conventional railing, which is what's there now, and we continue that particular point. Another factor that we can talk about is the height of the buildings, and I think we had some comments relative to how high these structures are and recognizing there's a 15-foot height limitations. One of the key characteristics of the design is that the fact the decks are independent from each other. They appear to be connected, but in fact they are independent. This was, again, recommended by the zoning administrator as a way of addressing that particular dilemma. How do you connect pieces together? So, in fact, each of the independent decks, as well as the house, transitions from the house to a piece of dirt, from another deck to a piece of dirt to another deck, etc. That's good for the project in a number of ways because it allows you to use the decks and to use the adjacent ground at the site, and I think it's a good solution. I don't think it's intended to evade what the code recommends, and in order to maintain appropriate heights of structures and to keep things in context, and I think it does a good job of both recognizing the hillside guidelines and how we step the project down the hill rather than make the project bigger or make a big deck, have that stick out. There's some adjacent properties that have similar configurations like that where you have big decks sticking out. We chose to scale it down rather than build one full almost 900 square foot deck, broke it into several elements so that it could fall down a hill and sort of meet those expectations. Other than that, we're fairly flexible about some aspects of the site. I have the owner here who will share some of his findings and some of his experiences with that site and with the project as we develop it. Perhaps he could further enhance the information that's available to you.
I have a quick question. What is this open area when I look at the rendering or on the deck B? What is that?
I think it says dirt there right now.
Yeah.
I believe, and again, I was asked that question previously, what we're going to do there is probably put like a seating area, like a conversation thing. We just haven't fully developed that aspect of the project.
Okay, but the way your section is drawn, that deck area, is it basically, it's going to be on grade?
No, and that's actually elevated. If I can take a minute and just kind of explain. The hillside is sloped like this.
Okay.
So what happens is if you take the specific geometry and the depth of what we've proposed, okay, so you have an angle, you have another angle, that the resulting height, that is the height of the structure itself, is critical as to how wide it can be. So the width, the depth, front to back, of each of the decks is predicated by how high they'll come up off of the adjacent grade.
Okay, but that doesn't answer my question with this open.
It's not open to the dirt. It's a flat surface there.
Okay, then the plan should show it's all deck there.
Right, and then graphically it may not be consistent with
Okay.
what I'm describing, but
My other question is, looking at the sections, I'm not really understanding how your exterior walls are working. All it's showing is a very heavy, I'm assuming those are pilasters that you're putting on the points. How's the deck covered, under the deck covered?
Okay.
How's that covered?
just let me describe the general construction. It'll be really obvious to you at that point. The structures themselves are supported on piles, drilled or dug piles.
Okay.
So those are your standard round concrete piers
Okay.
that you see in a lot of the construction in that area. Around that or on top of that is a wood frame structure, wood and steel construction.
Okay.
Okay, that is the actual surface of the deck. Hanging from that, in terms of structural condition, not in terms of what it looks like, is a skin, which is the outside of the deck surface. That is intended to meet the code requirements, both for zoning and planning, but also fire department requirements. The fire department doesn't want any exposed structures on the underside, so they've asked us, as well as staff through zoning, to face off the outsides of these things. So
When you say hanging, what does that mean?
the main structural component of the deck
Okay.
is at the deck surface. That's where
Okay.
the loads are, and that's where the specifics are. Because we're not wanting to create a intense, grading situation at the dirt itself, we're going to
Okay.
go just above the dirt and let it just be supported from above.
So,
Screen rather than a structure.
then in that case, if it's open, that means it's open all around. So when you have water discharge or any kind of a grading or drainage issues from higher up on the dirt, the water is going to percolate down, so you're going to have water under the deck. It's not going to be fully enclosed.
There'll be some water and some not water, yeah.
Okay, so how are you going to treat those walls that are going to be hung from there? Are you going to plaster both sides of that? Are you going to plaster inside and
I
out?
haven't fully
being
developed
underneath?
the detailed design, but that's a possibility to in order to
The
prevent...
reason that I'm going with this
Sure.
is it's a kind of an unorthodox way of constructing these decks. I haven't seen that. Usually, when you have piles and you have all these exposure to weather, you usually use steel and masonry walls and different things like that. One of the issues that I see that you get limited to the type of material you can use around the surface, so then you end up having these boxes without being able to kind of articulate that very well. Just like the deck right adjacent to that where it's masonry wall and it's somewhat different than the actual building. It's sitting as more of a earth tone, and it's more of rock. I mean, it's just more...
I think it's split-face block versus versus
stucco, box of stucco. Okay,
Well,
all
the
right.
intent is, you're being very, specific and clear as to what the variations are, and I think because of the unique nature of what we're trying to do, and you've recognized this is not a conventional approach
Right.
to it, I wouldn't say that we're trying to limit anything, or that the intent or the expectation is that we can limit things. We will, as appropriate, investigate whatever surfaces and materials are there. Given the predominant nature of what's on the site and what's there, it was my expectation that using similar materials to the house
I see.
was an appropriate response. I don't really know what your particular feelings
Okay.
might be. My goal is to find the best possible solution as it
Okay.
relates to that context, as well as take into consideration fire protection, drainage, all of the issues
Right.
that you brought up.
All right, thank you.
I have a question.
Sure.
The skirt that you just described that's hanging from the sides, that's not touching the ground, right? Which is very kind of...
It can touch the
rough.
ground to the extent that it's weather resistant, so.
Can you tell me what's the condition of the end of this screen that comes
Be
to the ground?
stucco underneath, and as we discussed earlier, perhaps on the back as well.
Do you think that might create a condition that the underside of the deck can become a great place for animals to, or I mean rodents?
One of
and
our
this
major
kind of-
concerns, how to avoid that, yeah.
Yeah, I just think that might become a, because
I'm worried
you can
about
never
skunks.
really
I'm worried about
follow-
skunks primarily.
Yeah, you can never follow the actual
Contour of the
grade,
turf, yeah.
and it seemed to me that the construction, until I saw the section, that the construction was that the walls were constructed and spanned with the decks,
Uh-huh.
which I was going to suggest that maybe it could be something that's more durable, like block construction. Why didn't you take that approach? Was it
I
harder
think, again, the intent was not to create a major disturbance to the earth there, and to increase
Okay.
the footprint, as it were. I mean, really taking it into account from a, I don't want to say ecological point of view, but just trying to be practical and not, it's a difficult place to build, so we don't want to drag a lot of machinery up there, we don't want to drag a lot of materials. The idea is to build it in pieces, erect it on the site with as little disruption as possible.
Okay.
We could take a more conventional approach, it just didn't seem, we spent more time to come up with this solution than had we gone with a conventional arrangement.
We need to move on. I'm going to call Stephen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
First of all, thank you very much for the hearing today and a chance to express my thoughts on a project that actually really started back when I bought this house in 2001.
Sorry, can we have the time going, Roger? Sorry. Okay, good.
My wife, being a large city dweller her entire life, wanted to have a home where she had a yard and so on, was very happy to be able to move into Glendale, but very quickly realized that she didn't really have access to a yard. And we've got grandchildren now, and it makes it a very awkward place to have families and grandchildren come and be able to go outside and have some type of yard activity. Really, the only place right now is in the street. And if you've been up there, that's dangerous. So we started playing with this thoughts of this particular project and so on, and we mentioned the idea of, or the issue of the original deck. When I bought the house, it was actually the city as part of the process of being able to acquire this house, made it really clear that that was totally an illegal, poorly designed, 100% agreed deck, and it had to be removed as part of the process, and that exposed those pipes that you see right now. All those pipes are connected, they're all solid, they all go to the drain at the bottom of the hill. But that's why you see them right now, and this project will cover that up and take care of that particular issue and so on. As far as the idea of making changes to the color and so on, I don't have any problems with that at all. Matter of fact, in the meeting we had with the city planning department, I asked the question, do you have any suggestions? And the answer I got back was, it's not our job to make suggestions. It's your job to submit plans and us to review them. But I'm more than happy. I mean, it can be any color we want. We can make, those type of changes and so on that, if you guys are the experts, you know a little bit better if things, fit in better that way and so on. In turn, what I did do, and I've lived in neighborhoods that had commissions that provide us, I think, an excellent service in being able to live in a community where we can be proud of the neighborhoods and so on we've got. So one thing I did is I took the plans and I started covering the neighborhood and introducing myself to some of the neighbors I have not met over the years, it's a shame to say, and a lot of the neighbors I knew. I've showed them the plans. I've covered the immediate 11 houses that actually have any relationship or touch to the property, and I've got 11 statements from all of those particular neighbors supporting the projects, not having any issues or concerns, looking forward to having the area and added to the neighborhood and so on. And in turn, I didn't get any type of pushback or concerns and issues at all from the neighbors. And I've brought along here 11 statements from those particular neighbors. If there's somebody I can turn those into. Not sure. And I'm more than happy to cover more neighbors. In talking with people, I think there's a real harmony in the neighborhood of looking for all of us to continue to make improvements in our properties and land.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We don't have any more cards, so the public session is closed. Mr. Carter, you want to go ahead and start?
Yes, I will start because, and I'm very appreciative of the applicant being open about changes in the look or color. And I think that's probably something that we should discuss. As I look at this, if this was in Oregon, I know what this deck would look like. Be open beams, and and it'd probably just disappear into the hillside there. But I'm not proposing that for this project. But I think we owe it to the applicant and to the city to talk a little bit about what some other approaches might be. And I, like the staff, am not ready to pro-offer one right now.
Okay. Zarifian?
I think generally the decks look pretty much where they should be in terms of finding the right place between the ground and the house, and kind of seems natural in that sense. I think one thing that I wrote down was, again, as I brought up, was the issue of the way the skirt meets the ground, and if there could be some way of showing a detail that how this will prevent issues of erosion, and all of a sudden you'll have a ground that's starting to erode away, and you have holes that will start exposing this sort of ends of the walls that are further up from the ground. I think that's a concern to me. The other thing is that I'm not sure what else, if you use skirts, how do you, is this constructed with wood structures again that you stucco both sides, as you said? That's an important issue as how it will be protected from the weather and how it will endure as being a good kind of construction. because I think what goes into that part of the site, it's the grade and the terrain is so rough that I think the stucco is a little bit of a finer material than it should be. It needs to be more enduring, like the concrete block or things like that can stay there, and they're going to be there and nothing will happen to them. But if it could find a way to be stucco, I think it could be more of earth tones and things that belong to the landscape rather than the house. And I think we need to have a complete landscaping plan to show how these decks will really tie themselves to the existing landscape.
Thank you. Seguros?
I think the location's fine. I think the breakup is fine. I probably would have taken it one flight up, half flight up to the house, only so you didn't have to go down two, but that's, preference. I do agree with Mr. Zarifian that it would be nice if it was more of an earth tone, so that it didn't look like it was the house and there was a disconnect there. So I think it should be much more of an earth tone relating to the landscape. But other than that, I'm in support of it. I think the issues about the end of the curtain wall, I think those are all valid, and there might be a way of doing, some type of grade beam that's not a grade beam in the sense of structure between the pilings, but something that would give you a curve that you could run structure to. So that's about it.
I applaud and appreciate the applicant for wanting to use more of the outdoor space, this big lot. So I think it's very appropriate to put these two decks there. But my concern is that this hill right now is really overbuilt. The two houses that are side by side really read from the back as four-story houses, and they're very, very large. From the front of the house, of course, there's no issue with any of this, but only two houses access that road, maybe three. But it's a very, very visible piece of property from the roads below, all the way from Cumberland up the side roads and also to the many, many houses that are on the hill that are across the canyon. These are very visible houses. So my concern is just that I do think this is adding quite a lot of mass and stucco to the hillside, which is already very, very heavy with house. If we can find a way to let them have their deck, but in a way that mitigates that as much as we can do, I think that's what we need to really push for. And I agree completely with having a landscape plan by a landscape architect, somebody who's licensed, who knows how to plant up there. Because what the staff report describes as being natural hillside is really not natural hillside. It's hillside that's been cut and filled, and right now has a lot of invasive plants, plants that are a problem and that have to be, the applicant's clearly cutting them down every year for fire protection, so you end up with just dirt. So there's very little there that's going to hide any of this, and the little that is there that's shown in their rendering is going to probably go away when they go in to do the construction. So I agree with that, but I am concerned because when I look at the photos that are submitted, it's almost reading like another structure. It's just a lot of stucco to put below a lot of other stucco. So if there's a way of using a different material, if different colors will be enough, if the board feels that they're comfortable with that, I think we really need to be very sure about that.
I do also agree with my colleagues. I don't have a problem with the addition of the decks, but I think if the intent is to be able to design a structure that will last, this is not designed to last. We have a lot of exposed elements there that it hasn't been really addressed properly. I think I agree with staff that I think more of an earth tone materials such as stone or other materials should be used. And from my understanding, I'm not an engineer, but from my understanding, every time you use a pile, those piles need to be tied together in order for them to work properly. If not, then somehow either the bottom of the piles or at the top of the piles need to be tied somehow together to be able to work all together at one level rather than independently. So by doing that, you may end up having a grade beam there, and by grade beam, you can actually put in certain block or some sort of a concrete there that it will block all the water going under the decks. And the way that it's being told, it was told to, that we're going to have this hanging curtain around or a skirt around the deck and being open underneath. I'm almost positive fire department will have an issue with that also. And you're also going to be, without having a foundation under those, you're going to have other supports that you're going to need to put in. So my suggestion would be is to look into other methods, such as block or masonry instead of the curtain walls. And I'm not sure about this. One other thought is that by the time you're done with all these masonry or wood or plaster, and I don't know if the architect has even considered looking into using steel and steel deck and get away with all these fire issues and you may be able to even leave exposed underneath and let the vegetation grow underneath and completely cover this deck and be able to put this structure within or part of the hillside. So again, that's a suggestion, looking into that. But I think landscaping is very important to be able to cover this, and I definitely agree that this skirt is an issue, and pretty much not much design has gone into it. You know, we created a box and whatever the shape the deck has come out to be. There's no overhangs. There's nothing there that kind of gives some sort of a character to the deck. So definitely landscaping will be a positive addition to this work. So.
Well, it's in some ways you say, well, it's only a deck, so it shouldn't be a big deal. And I want you to have your deck, but I'm not sure I'm ready to support it right now. I'd like to see what the rest of the board thinks, only because I think maybe some of this can be finessed and brought back, and then we'll all be able to pass it and know what we're getting. I just, right now, if I pass it, I feel like I don't know what it's going to look like, and I think we do need to know. I think that's what we're here for. There's a lot of options.
If I may, I'd like to go on record as being in support of having your deck, both decks, all of the decks, all the square footage and stuff. But I think we're hearing from a number of the board, if not the majority, that we'd like it to blend into the hillside a little bit. And if there's some redesign work, I guess it's as much not for square footage or space, but it's of blending.
In the landscape plan.
In the landscape plan.
So with that, I'll make a motion to return for redesign with the comments.
Would you
even
like
put it on
us?
consent next time, possibly?
Sure. Would you like
Staff is
us to
comfortable?
repeat the comments as we heard them?
I mean, whether or not it's on consent, it can always just be back again, and then the board can take a look, and if we're all comfortable with the plans, we can just pass them without opening the public hearing.
Yeah, we,
It's closed.
Can I say something?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, sir. I'm sorry, public.
Planning Department.
I'm sorry, sir.
They refuse to give
Sir,
anything
it is
back.
closed, sir. It is closed. Sorry. Please continue.
so if there is specific direction from the DRB, which I think there is, and maybe Mr. Duong could repeat back some of the comments, we'll be, and if those revisions are implemented to the direction of the DRB, we would be happy to bring this back and put this on the consent calendar. There's nothing that makes us more pleased than being able to put something on the consent calendar where staff believes there is full support of a project, and that's a good way for us to communicate that to you and the community. So, Rather?
Thank you. I heard some comments pertaining to exploring different options on how to approach the deck design and how it's treated. That was from Mr. Carter. And issue of the skirt where it meets the ground. And that needs to show more details and how that's going to work. Due to the concern with weather and the environment. Location and the breakup of the deck's fine. It's okay, as heard by Mr. Geragos. Again, the color may be better along the line of being an earth tone color.
Along with the skirt issue, you might just have him give you a construction section on the typical wall. That'll answer the questions on the construction method and stuff, so detailing.
And I also heard that it's appropriate to have 2 decks, but it also appears that this hill is overbuilt at this moment because these homes are sizable in terms of the size, particularly the appearance from the bottom of the hill.
Right, and I would add another sentence that says, because of this, to explore using other materials, steel, masonry, stone, to break up, however you want to say it.
If I may, to that end, when we did meet with the applicant a few times to discuss these issues, particularly with the issue of material, for us, we found it somewhat challenging to provide a very specific recommendation, primarily because the nature of the house, the nature of the open design of the deck, we felt it made it a little bit challenging for us to recommend what material might be appropriate. It seemed to us that, because typically we would recommend a stone or a split-faced block. I think Board Member Carter's notion of something that's open with something that you might see in the Pacific Northwest that's treated wood would blend in to the environment. So if it's that kind of, it seems that we definitely understood that the applicant was hoping for that kind of specificity. Is the laundry list of materials that I just described something that you would find appropriate? Would you suggest that the applicant should consider making the deck open rather than having it closed on all sides? Because we've heard that a little bit.
Can they do that with the fire regulations?
I don't think they can. I don't think they can do that, and I don't want to really get into the design of the project. And I want to make sure that everyone knows, especially the applicant, that we're not here, nor the staff is here to design the project for you. We're here to give you comments on the design, and it's very clear that the 3 comments that they have gotten is pretty much consistent with what we agreed on. So my suggestion and recommendation is that before the project comes in front of us, you want to make sure that if there are any issues or anything that staff has, you want to clear that up. You want to make sure that that has been addressed. You want to have the staff supportive of your project, and then you come to us, and then we work with that. So having said that, going into the specific design of opening, or we don't want to really give a specific design because we may be directing the applicant towards a direction that it may not be per code. So it is their responsibility to look at different options and check with the fire department, especially being in a fire zone. My thinking is that steel is a fire retardant. If they use steel, it can be very light, suspended. They can cantilever out so that the cut angle can be squared off. They can do a lot of different things, and they can plant under it and they can plant around it, so it'll hide away. So
if it pleases the board, what we might do is include maybe a laundry list of those suggestions for the different materials. Consider different materials such as, so that we have a record of providing some level of
materials
direction.
that can use steel, concrete, or wood. So
I think the way to approach
Fair enough.
I think there's a way to approach it, and just saying that either you're going to do a light structure with steel decks where it's open on posts that are non-flammable and built out of non-flammable material, or you're going to try to make it look massive with stone as it's a terrace or rock walls terracing down the hill. You're going to take one of those two approaches, and once you've taken those two approaches, it'll be obvious where you're going. If it's going to be the light structure like you're talking about, which I think would be great, to do essentially slabs that are coming down out of non-flammable material, that would be one great option to do.
Yeah.
Out of standard versions from that. Or, if you're going to do the more massive look, treat it as if it was stone and a heavier material like it's making a terrace. And I'd even say if they went with that, to add a little bit of wing on it,
Right.
just so it felt much more like it is a retaining wall in the landscape. But
Yeah,
it would
it's
be a darker color.
basically another way of saying it is that it could either belong to the house as part of the house or as part of the hillside. And we're saying it should be part of the hillside. And there could be two materials that they...
That intent is very clear. Thank you very much for that clarification.
Stephanie and Chairman Malikian, if I may, I don't want to leave this discussion without addressing the applicant's frustration and his unfortunate leaving of the hearing. But what we saw and what our audience here and at home saw is a very legitimate reluctance on staff. Although it appears that we redesign every potted geranium on a project, we actually have an inboard reluctance to say a lot about them. The policy is that it's your design, it's something that the solutions that you need to come up with. So in a case like this, we've tentatively said some things, but it does put a little more pressure on the architect, who has access to the city guidelines, to not only thoughts in this city, but in cities all over the country that have these very same situations. It's not just in Glendale. There are even places in Maryland, say, that these things come up. So it does put a little pressure on the architect to come on board with some of the solutions. And if the applicant was here, that's what I would tell him.
So rather, can you incorporate that comment that Mr. Zarifian said, that rather than trying to make the deck blend in with the house, it should blend in with the hillside? That should be the design intent.
Yeah.
And whatever way they can accomplish that in many ways, but if they come back and that's done, and it feels integrated with a natural hillside, it will pass.
That statement is very clear. Thank you.
So with that, I'll make a motion to return for redesign.
Actually, can I interject? I want to make clear that there seemed to be a consensus on the condition that staff had requiring landscape plans.
Absolutely.
And it didn't look like Rather had gotten to that yet.
Right.
And then Mr. Garagos also mentioned he'd like to have the applicant provide construction
Do a
section.
construction section if you do that, it'll answer our questions.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that was in the comments.
In addition, staff had provided a recommendation to lower the overall height of the decks. Is that, and potentially eliminate some of the stairs. I don't think I heard that in the board's discussion.
You eliminate the height, it doesn't necessarily mean the stairs are going to get, eliminated, because
It would get further up the hill.
It would get further up the hill, then you're going to have more of a retaining condition, because
It would feel more like the house making the house bigger.
the way it is, I think is fine.
So we should eliminate that
Yeah.
condition number 1, and then condition number 2 and 3 we can include and clarify with the comments that you've made. Thank you.
Ms. Friedman wanted to make a motion?
Made a motion to return for redesign with the comments and conditions.
I would second.
Okay, I have a first and a second. This will be roll call. Ms. Friedman,
Yes.
Mr. Gergos,
Yes.
Mr. Zarifian,
Yes.
Mr. Carter,
Yes.
and Chairman Malikian.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Just one more quick item. Just make sure that the applicant understands, this applicant came after, it was filed after April 24th, correct? So this was returned for redesign, and they have one more try, correct? Correct. So we want to make sure that, and if you guys want to elaborate on that, so everybody knows.
Yes, what Chair Malikian is referring to is the ordinance that went into effect on April 24th for return for redesign. I believe that date is May 27th. And after that point, the new ordinance is in effect, which prescribes a one-time return for redesign. After that, the board is more limited to approve with conditions, or deny.
Thank you. Are we ready for the next one? We're going to take a 5-minute recess. Yes.
Free me? So, Mr.
Actually-
Chair,
We're not open yet. Are we open?
yeah, Mr. Chair, I have to leave because I am living within the 500-foot notice area of the next project.
See you
So
in 2
good luck
weeks.
to you all. Thank you.
Okay, so the next item, and let me get the 2 PDR 2008-036A. Where's the planner? Chris?
Chris is.
Hey, Mr. Chair, members of the board, our next project is located at 292 Cumberland. It's case number 2 PDR 2008-036A. It's the first time submittal reviewed by the board. The proposal is to demolish the existing one-story house and construct a 3,800 square foot two-story house with a garage and a basement, 3-car garage and basement. The existing house is a contemporary ranch-style house, and the proposed one, the applicant's identifying as Spanish colonial. The staff felt it had more Mediterranean architectural influence, as noted in your staff report. Very quickly, I'd like to go through the plans. We have, let's see, on our location map, you can see that Cumberland and Valley View kind of intersect right in this area here. There's a Valley View, and it kind of wraps, goes up. Cumberland kind of comes into here. It's kind of an intersecting area. Cumberland also goes in here, which looks like a driveway to the neighbors right through here. So you'll have some different setbacks as relates to that. So over here, you can see here's Cumberland. The Valley View would be here. So this is our north end of the site down here. And our property line goes up and angles back like this. So the existing house is this light print here, dashed lines. Sits back about 50 feet to the face, to the side of the garage here. So the driveway goes in, wraps around like this. Now the house will be constructed with the one-story garage pulled forward a little bit within 25 feet of the street. The house itself will remain back at, well, probably greater than 50 feet, but right at this area right through here. So, of course, it's attached, but nevertheless, the garage is here, and the house will be pulled back here. And your property line goes like this, as well as like that. Very quickly on the plans, we have our front entry here. This is as you would view it from Cumberland. You would probably see a portion of this angle here, the 3-car garage from Cumberland. This would be your westerly view if you were looking at it from Valley View. This would be the rear elevation, and then this is the easterly elevation over here on the east side of the house, which would be the top of the page over here. I placed the second floor plans on top, first floor, basement, so you have your sequence in that way. You have our roof plan, and then we have some section views here. Color material board, and I believe you have the photographs that you're passing around. Now, I'm just going to walk through the staff report very briefly here. Wanted to note that there are a couple of large protected trees. I shouldn't have put that down just yet. We have a couple of large protected trees. We have a sycamore tree and an oak tree in this location, which will be on this east elevation over here. can see them here. The drip lines, they've talked to the oak tree, or the urban forester people, and those are relatively accurate looking drip lines through there from my being to the site on at least 3 occasions. The neighborhood is in the Woodlands neighborhood. This particular district within this neighborhood is called the Brockmont District. It's recognized for its woodland characteristics, as is stated in the staff report. A very quick comparison of the neighborhood. The subject site is 18,000 square feet, and the range of properties in this neighborhood range between 8,100 to 30,000 square feet. So this is about midway, about 18,000. The setbacks range between 15 feet and 100 feet plus, because I know some of these are set back pretty far. The average is about 40, and the subject site is 25 feet setback for that garage portion that now projects forward. The house sizes, the ranges are about 1,500 to 7,400 square feet, with the average being about 2,600, and the proposed house will be 3,800. Our floor area ratios range between 7% to 34%, the average being 17, and the house being reviewed is 21%. And 54% of the homes in the survey that was submitted to you all are 2-story, so 54%. Now, the 3 categories in the staff report, there's the site planning, there's mass and scale, and design. I just want to hit some high points on these. As I probably mentioned to you, and this may come up later on our conversation, there is a gentle slope that goes back to the site. It's about 9, almost 10%. It goes from here down and back in the back of the property. As it slopes down the hill, you have a pool and some other recreational areas that the applicant has already developed. The landscaping, as I mentioned, has the oak trees and the sycamore tree. And it also comes into play with the access and parking and privacy issues that we noted in the staff report. There's a portion of the driveway, which is a very large driveway now, lots of concrete and everything, and the applicant will, first of all, be bringing a garage forward that will be covering some of the concrete, but then this landscape area here will be will replace the concrete over there in that area, so it'll be reducing the driveway volume in the front. He will need a 25-foot backup area to come out, etc., so that works. And then on the privacy issue, below here we have a single-family house right on this corner. The backyard directly faces this property here. It's a very narrow backyard, the house footprint, and a pool. There's a little pool right here. And so there was some issues that the staff looked at, and we felt that for the most part the house was designed well enough that it wasn't too bad of a privacy invasion issue at all, as a matter of fact, because we have a relatively tall 6-foot-high wall. There's fairly dense landscaping being proposed. Our landscape plan that we'll be asking for will be something that we want to review to make sure that does remain. The balconies are relatively pulled back on the first and second floors, so we didn't think those were going to be issues. So that's where the landscaping kind of impacts at least 3 different areas: the site itself, the parking, and those and the privacy issue. Another issue is when we look at mass and scale. Here, it's just
Chris, let me ask you this quick question. This window, you're telling me the privacy is not an issue with this, correct? From a bedroom?
That is correct. Now, on that side, that's the east side. The side that you would
I'm
be...
sorry.
We're looking at this side over here.
Oh, right. Okay.
So what we have here, I believe this is a bathroom and this is a laundry room, or vice versa. Yes, here's the laundry room.
My bad, yes.
Right there. And here is a bathroom here. And you can see it's pulled back. So that's why staff was thinking that. And if you look at the balconies, they're even further pulled back. If this is 10 feet, or maybe even, let's say 10 feet, this is pulled back and this is pulled back. So
Excuse me, on the east elevation, you're saying there's no privacy issues, why? Because
Okay.
there's large trees there, is that?
Oh, nope.
No, what is it?
The existing house, the existing house begins back here.
Begins back there, yeah.
Yeah, there is no house over here. You have the trees over here. So the existing house actually looks into the backyard. So the applicant, the neighbors are here, I'm sure they can
Okay.
speak to that
That's
issue.
this
Yeah.
house here, then, yeah.
Well, see, what's interesting, as I mentioned, you come down, and this is actually, we showed on our street maps as being a public street for a portion of it, but it's a private driveway for all practical purposes when you're up there, and you go up, and you go way back here, and their house is back here. This is probably one of the ones that are over 100 feet from this street right here. Okay, on the mass and scales, we mentioned what we have. We have the smaller version of the garage, or at least I should say the one-story element pulled forward, the larger version pulled back. We did have some comments about the house. In general, the way our staff report reads is that even though it does have kind of a unified compactness, we feel that the overall appearance, as compared to the other homes, is going to be relatively compatible. But you can see that in our staff report. On the architectural style and design, the staff felt that the house still carried probably more Mediterranean influences rather than the pure Spanish colonial that the applicant wants to identify it with. But we didn't feel that it didn't take away from the architectural style of the building. We didn't feel that would be incompatible with the neighborhood. And then on the windows, we did make a comment about the windows. We just want to make sure that the windows shown on the plans are the detail and the integrity of the windows are actually carried through into the construction field. So we asked for a condition relating to that. So when we get down to our conditions at the very end, we're asking for a landscape plan to address the screening issues that we'll have along through here, the landscape planting area through here. We want to make sure that the urban forester's comments that we have here on these plans are carried through onto the landscape plans, and we want to make sure that the window and door details and frames and colors are going to be carried through as nicely as they're shown on this architectural elevation plans. Those are our three conditions there. That's a real quick summary of the staff report and the project. I can answer questions, or we have the applicant and his architect and the neighbors here to discuss this as well.
Mr. Edward Hagopian?
Good evening, Mr. Chair and board members. My name is Edward Hagopian. I'm the architect of this project. My address is 220 South Kenwood Street, Glendale, 91205, unit number 210. I think it's well explained elaborately all this in the staff report. There's not much left for me to say, except that I would like to talk about first the size of the houses in that neighborhood. It was a surprise for me that Mr. Baxter has seen a house of 7,000 square foot and more. I don't remember which one is that, but however, maybe that's a little bit beyond the 300 foot of our house. But the largest house in that 300 foot is 1536 Valley View Road, 314 Cumberland Road, which is 4,458 square foot. The second largest house is 1620 Valley View Road, which is 4,380 square foot. And the third largest is 4,011. These are houses that are larger than this house. And we did get in this information. Usually we get this from the title company. That's one thing that I would like to compare the size of the house. Mr. Carter asked about the privacy on our east side, and this is what's happening in our east side. I would like to give this photo that our neighbor is looking directly.
Oh, you need to speak into the mic. You need to speak into the mic.
I would like to give this. Before I start to design this project, I walked through that neighborhood, and I looked into the houses on that side of the street, and I have pictures of some of those houses that all of them are two-story, and they have very high English tutor type roof that overall height is something like about 3-story. So that we designed the house to be two-story, and landscaping on the backyard is very entertaining. I would like to show you some pictures of the backyard, which the owner likes really to have a nice landscaping with a lot of, I would say, Disneyland type features. And where we are in the front setback, where we will have our new driveway, we'll reduce the width of the driveway and we'll add some more landscaping there. The other indigenous trees, it is mitigated already. We have no problem with those. Other than that, as I said, since it's well explained in this report, there's not much for me to say.
Okay.
If you have any questions.
Thank you. I just have a question for staff.
Yes.
For staff.
Yes, sir.
Do you have a copy of the neighborhood analysis?
Yes, I do. I was looking through there myself. Mr. Gobian's right. I don't know where I got 7,000 square feet from anyway. So.
I'm just wondering what the rest of them are.
Yes, sir.
I do have it here if you want to make a copy.
Do you have a map that goes with it? Do you have a map that goes with it? Do you have a map? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Ocampo.
Any questions?
No. You're fine. Okay. Christina Kaminsky.
Hi, my name is Christina Kaminsky, and my husband and I own the home directly across the street from the subject property on Cumberland. We have a perfect dead-on view of the existing home and its parking lot in front, as well as the new designs. I have a lot of concerns because the reason my husband and I live in this neighborhood is because it is the woodland area of Glendale. The house that we live in is relatively original, as are some of the homes that are in the neighborhood. There are very few new construction homes, and I feel that this home is incompatible for our neighborhood. A lot of the homes are of historic character, whether they're ranch or traditional or an authentic Spanish, and this appears to be a Santa Clarita type of Palm Springs or Porter Ranch type of new construction Mediterranean home. I feel that it would be out of character for our neighborhood. It will block the view that we have of downtown Glendale from our house by increasing the height. I have concerns in regards to the mass and scale. I have concerns in regards to the privacy, where there will be 2 step-out balconies looking straight at my house, straight into every room of my house. I'm concerned about the size and height of the front entry. I feel that it is completely inconsistent of character within our neighborhood, and I wouldn't even classify it as Spanish. I'm concerned that they're not using authentic Spanish roofing tile on a, quote, Mediterranean home. I'm concerned that the windows don't have any panes. I'm concerned about how many cars are parking on the property already versus how many will be parking not only in the driveway, but you have a 3-car garage with modern-style doors. I just don't feel that it blends into our neighborhood at all. I think it's a massive structure, and even the homes that are larger are not laid out this same way. I mean, this house is almost a box. And so I'm very concerned about the impending construction on the property. And I'm also concerned about the setback.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm sorry, your address was 301?
I live at 1555 Valley View Road, which is directly across the street from the subject plans.
Okay, thank you, sorry.
Which one is it?
It's 2.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought you meant 1. Okay.
Linda Knudsen? Knudsen? Sorry.
Good evening. My name is Linda Knudsen. I reside at 300 Cumberland Road. I've lived there for 15 years, and I moved there
I'm sorry,
primarily...
your address was?
300 Cumberland Road.
Thank you.
I tend to talk rather fast, so slow me down if you have to. Okay. We moved into the neighborhood 15 years ago primarily because we fell in love with it. It's beautiful, it's old, it's traditional, as Christina's saying, historical sites, and we really love it. And when I look at this modern, to me, what looks like a modern structure going up, I find it a little bit offensive, and I like my old neighborhood. That's why I moved there, and I'm here to hope that you'll take that into consideration, and I'm also here to support my neighbors who have to look at it and live next door to it and deal with it. My immediate neighbor at 1542 Valley View kind of did the same thing to a 1920s home. Yeah, he's directly, well, nobody's there now, it's empty, but he took something that what I thought was absolutely gorgeous and beautiful, and he's turned it into a Santa Clarita special, so I don't want to see that happen in my neighborhood, and that's why I'm here tonight. Thank you.
Ms. Sharon Hillman?
Hello, I'm Sharon Hillman, and I reside at 431 Brockmont Drive. I've been a resident in this neighborhood for 36 years, and as my other neighbor just mentioned, we really have seen very little new construction in our neighborhood. And the thing that I really want to address is the windows. We have many, many Spanish homes in our area, and none of them have single-paned windows. They are all divided with wood. It's just a very modern look, and it just does not go with the Spanish architecture of a home at all. My other concern is the roof. All of the Spanish homes in our area also have the regular barrel tile, and it'll just distract from the neighborhood. So those are kind of my real concerns. I know there's other neighbors here that have other issues, and we kind of all agree on some of the design flaws, but I'm going to let them take their time, and instead of just repeating ourselves over it. Thank you.
Thank you. Rebecca Hinkle?
I'm Rebecca Hinkle, and I reside at 356 Cumberland Road. I own a Spanish house, 1923. My house goes from corner to corner, and I moved into the neighborhood, like I said, 23 years ago, raised my children there, and I have watched the progress or the demise of the neighborhood for the last 33 years. This house is not what fits in this neighborhood. If they want to do Spanish, they need to go back to the drawing plans and design a Spanish house that fits to all the Spanish houses in the neighborhood. Most of the houses are from the 20s to the 30s in the Spanish, and if they're not Spanish, they're a character house, like they have the character, they're just a character house. Either they're English or something like that, an English tutor or something of that nature. And the pitches of those roofs is that the architect was addressing on some of the houses. Those are on a slope that goes like this. Valley View comes up and then has a complete slope. These houses he's speaking about are all sitting like this, and the pitches fit for the houses. So there's not like it's just this big roof that we're looking at. I also, the three-car garage does not fit with the area. Right now, we look at nothing but concrete, and I understand that that was a mistake by the city on giving approval to it. It was not supposed to be done. There's very, very, very little landscaping, and what they're proposing right now is to keep the little bit of landscaping they have and put more structure on the property. If the property was wider, it would probably fit, but they're looking at a narrow piece of property going like this and then going down a hill, and this is not the structure for that. I will go ahead and touch base on all of the other things that Christina said if you'd like, but if it's not needed, I'll pass it on to the next person.
Thank you. Philip Keller?
Hello and good evening, Chairman, board members, and staff. My name is Philip Keller. I'm a board member of the Northwest Glendale Homeowners Association, and I serve as its DRB representative. I'm going to speak a little quickly to get this all in. I'm here today to speak on some of our concerns with this proposed project before you. But I'd like to begin by describing the neighborhood in which this proposed new construction would reside in. This area of Cumberland Road and Valley View Road contains some of the city's finest examples of residential architecture, particularly period character homes, all within a beautifully landscaped neighborhood environment. Appropriate scale, excellent proportion, well-balanced massing, assortment of very detailed work, high-quality materials, and construction are all elements which work to define these fine homes. We feel that the proposal before you today has made a good start in its initial design direction, particularly with the scale of the home not being excessive. But we feel it still falls short in its refinement and character as related to the elements I have previously described, which are crucial to a new home's ability to successfully integrate into the neighborhood. Looking at the front of the house, as was previously mentioned, the driveway, it's way too much concrete. The rear right corner needs to be taken out and landscaped, just maintaining what is necessary as a driveway, pull-in and back-out arch for the garage. The garage itself is a 3-car. It should be a 2-car. It doesn't fit in the neighborhood. The size of the house does not trip the code need to be a 3-car garage. And even with the reduction to the 2-car garage, it would reduce the setback, increase the landscaping, and the driveway size would still allow probably 4 cars to park in the driveway in addition to the 2 cars in the garage. And that's very, very, very ample. As was mentioned before, the front entryway at 10 feet tall. The archway is 10 feet tall when you step up on the top step in front of the door. This does not fit the proportion of the house or the neighborhood. It should be reduced down to 7 or 8 feet to more appropriately go with the architectural style. The windows, again, as been stated, single-pane windows are not the best choice to fit with the style of home. A window with muntins or stick breakups is more appropriate for this style home. I think the quality of the window he's chosen, the wood with the clad, is good, but he just needs the muntins in there. And the roof tile, which has been addressed, it should be barrel. Overall, I think that the design needs further refinement, which would better represent the unique character and proportions of a Mediterranean or Spanish Revival house. Examples would be more plaster surface details, buttresses, wrought iron window grills, more asymmetrical balance on the front and side facades, which are very typical in Mediterranean or Spanish colonial revival homes. Only a top-notch piece of architecture will fit into this neighborhood. Northwest Glendale Homeowners Association feels that this talented architect can deliver this with further exploration and redesign of this project, with particular emphasis on architectural character. We wish the applicant to have their dream home, but one that more successfully conveys the refinement of the neighborhood, and we hope they can do it, and we believe they can. Thank you.
Thank you. Frank Grossman.
Hi, my name is Frank Grossman, and I reside at 286 Cumberland. That's the house, I guess, to the east, directly above their house. My main concern when I look at the house is that although it's quite big and it will seem to be right on the street compared to most of the other houses, especially with that garage coming out all that way. Right now, our house is a little hard to find, and we have trouble getting directions because we come up this private driveway. And I tell them, well, look for the place that's completely paved, and then, turn right after that. It just doesn't fit in with the neighborhood. And I'm concerned that character is going to continue into this design with, mostly a garage and then a big driveway, and the part of the landscaping that you would see will be behind a retaining wall, essentially, if you look at the house as you come up there. So you wouldn't see any landscaping that I can see from this design. So those are my main concerns when I look at this house. Thank you.
Barbara Grossman.
I'm Barbara Grossman, and I also live at 286 Cumberland Road.
We are the direct neighbors on the east of the project, so we'll be viewing the lower picture from our front yard primarily. We desire to be neighborly, but do have concerns about the impact this project will have on the neighborhood and our family home, which in design is mid-century woodsy with some craftsman tendencies, built in 1951, so it's very different from that. I am a Glendale native, have lived all my life mostly in this neighborhood, so I really understand its quality. First area of concern is the mass and scale. We're concerned that the house seems towering over our yard and perhaps disproportionate to the narrowness of the lot and the character of the neighborhood. There seems to be a boxiness and verticality to the overall design, especially from our eastern view, although there are some interesting ins and outs on some exterior walls. Looking at that lower design, I'm wondering if perhaps some of the design aspects from the Spanish Mediterranean ideas that Mr. Keller brought up could be used to the left of those windows. We don't need more windows. The neighbors are trying to be careful of our privacy on that. It looks over in our yard. The height poles, we realize it's going to be really tall, so we're wondering about the floor-to-ceiling heights that might be changed to mitigate the towering look of the house. Concerned about the height poles, if they accurately reflect the height. Again, like Mr. Keller said, could the height of the entryway be lowered? This affects our property. We are so close. These 1940s and 1950s lots, we were built so close to their house about the same time. Ours was built a little before. We don't need them any closer together, so I don't want to see the house move back farther on the lot. And the neighbor has taken this into consideration in the design. The roofs concern me. We have historical homes such as the Brockmont Clock Tower house. The S-tiles, I'm concerned about those and the color. The driveway, as everybody has stated, the width is that admitted mistake. With the woodland area. We need to maintain the woodland area. 8 podocarpus trees are for shielding. They're not really landscape trees. They shield beautifully, and he's used them to great success in the back. But we need something more woodlands if we are truly the Brockmont district of the woodlands neighborhood. So I hope that the design will have more woodland aspects, and a lighting plan would be beneficial, as I'm hoping that the lighting wouldn't be overpowering. So we would like to see a landscape plan to incorporate more woodland area, perhaps a 2-car garage to mitigate the real cement and the only 25-foot setback. So those are my concerns, but we do appreciate that the neighbor is able to build his home for his family, and we do want to maintain neighborliness. So thank you.
Thank you. We also have a letter from Linda Phillips, so I would like to acknowledge that, and hoping all my colleagues read that. All right,
And
Mr.
just
Hercule? Yes.
Just a quick question before we proceed. Has there been any ex parte communication with the owners of the neighboring properties by the board members? And my assumption is that, like with every property, the board members have visited the site. So I just wanted to mention that.
Yes, I have 4 pictures of 4 houses in 300-foot distance from this house, and I would like this to be a part of the record. So I don't want to say neighbors are lying, but these pictures will tell you if we have 3-car garage facing street. One.
Okay, we'll look at it. If you can just go ahead and speak in the...
Yes. 3 and 4. There are a lot of things that our neighbors mentioned here that I do not agree with them absolutely, because that's not true. We are using quality windows. We are using quality materials. Even if you see some of those houses that the roof is Spanish, the garage door is not. It's totally modern type of doors there. Our neighbor's house, you saw in that picture that their property is a flag lot. So it's a different driveway than ours. Our three-car garage is not facing the street as those other houses are in that pictures. Our garage is facing sideways. So if we are talking about compatibility, let's be honest and true about that. The roof is a clay tile. Is that a bad material? Is that not acceptable material? That is... Is time right?
You get 2 minutes to rebut.
Only?
So
May
you
I
would
ask
like
for
to...
more time?
You can wrap up if you can. You have 30 seconds, please.
Well, our neighbors, they have said a lot of things that it's not true, and I would like to show you all these pictures, all...
Okay, well, why don't you go ahead and do that rather than...
Okay, okay.
Should I give him another 2 minutes?
Please.
Our neighbor across the street is complaining about the view. There is no view there. There is no city view, except that in between two houses, there is a very little view to see. And now that view will remain the same and more, because we are moving the upper level of our house away from the property line, while the existing house has a very high roof. So we'll open up some view if there is any there. Now, if you look into these pictures of the houses in that neighborhood, I'm wondering if this kind of quality design does not fit in that neighborhood. With all these articulations, with all these materials, good materials, clad windows, exposed roof rafters, how that cannot fit in that neighborhood. I have been in design board for many, many years. And unfortunately, I have once in a while, I have seen that people are complaining with no regards to the quality of the design, and they don't want to see the facts. The poles that they are complaining, the story poles, that it's 10 feet. It's not 10 feet. The 10 feet is an average height of the roof that was recommended for us in writing from the city of Glendale, and I would like Chris to elaborate on that. And we installed according to the requirements of the city.
What was that again, 10 feet?
Let's say for the garage portion of it. Our garage is
I
not
see.
10 feet high in the plate line, but since it starts, let's say, from 9 feet, it goes to 11 foot to the pitch of the roof. City planning staff, they had told us to put a pole that it's longer than 9 feet and shorter than 11 feet, which is 10 feet. And we did it accordingly. It's the same with the rest of the house.
Okay. Anything else?
Well, there are a lot of things to say. Several people talked, and I want to respond to
Okay.
all of them.
Why don't we just go ahead and do that if you can,
Okay.
please?
And two of the complainants, they said there hasn't been any new construction in that street. That is not true. Two houses are built like about 2 years ago or 3 years ago, right in that side of the street. Two houses are under construction there. Those are totally, completely new houses. The plain variation on this house, please look at it. And you compare this to any house in that neighborhood, Spanish style or any other style. I have worked very hard to make this house to have the most possible plain variations so that it's not a box. As you can see in those pictures that some of them, they are boxy. We had 2 meetings with Stephanie, and we made some changes to satisfy the planning department, and we thought, as it says in this report, we thought that we have done our best, and we have designed a beautiful house that will be a good addition to this neighborhood.
Thank you very much, Mr.
Mr. Gobian, just in closing, I'd like to ask, the neighbors that appeared, They're not actually complaining. They're not complainers. They're making statements. Perhaps the statements are not true, but they're not actually complaining. So if, when you address this, it's not really fair to characterize them as complaining.
It's my duty to defend the owner and to show the pictures that there are 3-car garage houses.
Right, that's a statement of fact or incorrect.
Why they have to come to this place and lie?
We're not going to have a cross dialogue. If
Thank
you
you.
have a question.
Thank you.
then. Thank you.
Any questions?
Mr. Geragos, you want to go ahead and start?
Sure.
No.
No. They are in the neighborhood.
A lot of them might be
They are,
my house.
okay, I cannot talk with you on this because it's public is closed, public session is closed, but there are 3 cars, yes.
Would you like us to clean up the...
Yes, please.
A couple things. In general, I think the house size is fine. It's clearly within the requirements or the neighborhood averages, the setback, lot coverage, all those sort of standard numbers I think are well within the neighborhood averages. The issue, we'll just hit them as I come, no particular order, but just as we were talking about them. I personally don't have a problem with the 3-car garage. I would do them as 3 separate doors, as much of the houses in the neighborhood have it, which I think is a much better look than a 2-car door. So I don't have a problem with the 3-car, but they should be treated as 3 separate doors. I think there is a lot of minimizing of the existing hardscape that's there, so I think that is a positive. There's going to be quite a bit of new landscaping that's happening there, and we would be, I'm sure, requesting a landscape plan. I'd probably, while you're talking about that hardscape in front of, or to the right of the entry, that would be a good spot to add some additional landscaping, which I think would soften the facade. The property on the upper part of the plan, again, my directions, I guess that is the east side. There is an elevation change there, so you really aren't seeing the entire facade. You're seeing a new facade because it is a 2-story house, but you're essentially seeing 1 story that didn't exist before, but you're seeing 1 story, not 2, so it's not like you're seeing the entire facade. I do actually have a couple of questions that go to the style and the shape. As I looked at the plan, what really struck me is that you actually did a really fantastic rear facade, and I like it much better than your front facade. So, and I think what that leads me to, which I think is my overall sense, the massing I really don't mind. I think the overall depth of the house is small for this size house, so in that sense it'll minimize its impact on neighbors. But I think in terms of the massing, what I like about the rear facade is it is a really strong forms that are really in keeping with the style. And on the front facade, you don't have that kind of strength and architectural definition. I think the windows on the upper left side seem a little bit random. The connection between the entry and the other side and then the porch to the far side seems way too light for how the rest of the house is. I think that's what's nice about the rear, is that there's that kind of strength. So I think that porch that's on the west side, I think seems out of character in my mind. Like I said, I think there's more characteristics to the front, I think, that give it strength. In some ways, that was the front facade as opposed to the one that it is. I think it would be quite a bit stronger. And in that, I think when you see the other properties in the neighborhood, contrary, we always talk about different things, but boxiness is actually the character of the houses, the Spanish houses that are there. So if he had drawn it in the characteristic of the houses that are in the neighborhood, you would call that boxier than this, just by nature. But in reality, I think that's very in keeping with the Spanish style, is a very strong forms. There's almost primal forms, gable ends, and a very strong massing. So in my mind, my recommendation would be to actually get it a little boxier, because in some ways that would feel much like the older homes that are in the neighborhood. So, little scattershot, I get to be the first, maybe I'll come around and get a second swing at it, but that's the feeling I have. I don't, in a sense, the massing of it, all those kind of things I think are fine. I don't have a problem with those issues, but I think the the execution and a little bit of the massing, I think, is my issue, so.
If I may, I just wanted to quickly mention that the balconies at the front, the architect had responded to a recommendation by staff to lighten those up, so I wanted to come clean on
Blame
that.
on you? Fair enough.
Mr. Malik, if I may go second,
Yes,
I sort of shape my remarks about what I do know, and there's a lot I don't know, but what I do know about this neighborhood, that it is an extremely established neighborhood. People that are lucky enough to own homes there, it's a premier section of Glendale. So on a lot this size, you should be able to have a wonderful development that's fairly large in size and fits in an attractive way with the neighborhood. What the neighbors should understand on this is because of the lot size, some 18,000 square foot, the floor area ratio permissible would permit a house that you wouldn't even want to think about. So it's going to be a large thing. We can all, if it was bad on the numbers, we wouldn't even have to be talking. Staff would say, hey, this doesn't work. But the floor area ratio allows a fairly large project on here. My knee-jerk reaction to a large project is, and which has been successful in a lot of them, is to step things back. Step things back is a way of dealing with that in-your-face sort of development. But in this case, stepping it back would actually negatively impact some of the very close neighbors. So it is a design that will lay out somewhat as we see it here. My life raft that Mr. Gallegos has thrown me is sort of to direct it more in as many elements of the Spanish style in the homes that we do see there. I think that could ameliorate some of the impact of this project, and that's where I'm going to focus on.
You're fast enough.
Yeah.
It's your turn.
First, I'd like to thank some of the neighbors that always come in with a positive attitude, and they express their feelings in a very honest way. Especially, I noticed Mr. and Mrs. Grossman and Philip Keller, who always comes in with very effective way of expressing their true feelings and concerns. So thank you all for trying to be honest and be effective in what your real concerns are. But other than that, I need to jump into some of the notes that I've made here, so that for the interest of time, I think everyone made their points very precisely, so I like to do the same. One thing that aside from this particular house, I think we need to make a requirement that every project should come in with a section or way of expressing the house within the context in a drawing form, because I think it's unfair to us and the people, both sides, to come in and present pictures and hoping that somehow in our minds, even that we've been there, we can put the two together and say this is perfectly fine, or not for that matter. So my question to the staff is that how can we make that a requirement, especially the neighbors right across and to the sides?
Thank you for that comment. We have very often requested that information from the applicant. We are now going through a process of revising our submittal requirements, and that is one of the items on the agenda that we're considering. Every time that we consider an additional requirement, we always do consider the trade-off of having that additional expense imposed on the applicant with the benefit. So we will continue to have that discussion. I think we would agree that that would be beneficial, and we've recommended it specifically in areas that are sloped. And I think you have seen in many cases site sections that we've specifically requested of applicants, but we appreciate your concern about that. We're on the same page on that and considering making that a requirement. Thank you.
Okay. Then some of the points that I've made here is I think that the house is definitely not a box. I mean, I wouldn't characterize it as such. I think I agree with Mr. Gerakos, is the back elevation is a better representative of what this house can be, and the lightening of the windows definitely not the right thing to do. It seems like very alien to the character of the house itself. I think making the 3 openings for the garage is a good move, as you stated. One thing that I noticed, I think if you look at the front elevation, this is the garage, and
The pointer's here.
oh right, the garage, the way, if you look at the 3-dimensional drawing, which I think it's in our package, but it's not on the wall, the garage kind of crashes right to the entry that wants to be so sort of formal. And if you look at this corner, I think that kind of becomes the 2 fight together. They don't go together. It's like if you had a Spanish house that was designed maybe 100 years ago. I mean, the way they had established their ways of doing things, their classical Spanish house, I don't think they would come together as a formal entry and some sort of a secondary structure kind of crashing into there. So I think from a design point of view, I mean, that's something to consider. And I think sort of bringing these 2 together is a very positive thing to maintain the character of the house. I think the windows, I've seen many different houses that don't have maybe those intermediate buttons, and they're still fine. The windows have the right weight to them, and I think they're of good quality the way it looks, as is described on this on the elevations. I have personally, I think this detail, to me at least, it throws off this issue of style. It kind of confuses the style, although it might be of some Spanish sort of house, or I can't.
It's a Spanish motif. Yeah. It's a Spanish motif.
I know it is, but I think the rest of the house doesn't kind of.
It makes it want to be too historic when it wants to be contemporary.
One tries to be historic, one tries to be modern, so it kind of, there are other ways that you can maybe break this down, maybe by introducing a simple entry, or simple sort of opening with some wood beam that goes in recessed, that gives some detail to that opening, without trying to kind of introducing a detail that belongs to sort of a more traditional language. But I think generally I would try to, maybe it has to do with something with the scale of the entry, the way it works with the garage, or if something could be done to resolve this. I'm not sure what it is now. I'm sorry, I can't give you even a recommendation. It might be something that has to do with the scale of the 2, or some other way that
We have a
they can
suggestion.
come together. But anyway, that's I think some of the major points that I needed to make about my observations. Unfortunately, I think as far as views, we don't have view issues that are not addressed as far as having major spaces that look directly into the spaces.
That's the privacy.
That's privacy issues, yeah. But that's basically what I think. I think the issue of style is an important one, as Mr. Girarco said. It needs to have some finesse to come down to something that's more in line with the clear character of the neighborhood.
Mr. Karagos, you said you were going to...
Yeah, just on that same line, I think when you said about using the motifs, I think if you use the motif, I think that's fine. I think that would lean you to doing divided lights. You know, I think if you're going to take it more contemporary, I think you need to take it that way, as opposed to trying to do elements of either, which would confuse it. But I think just to piggyback on your issue, I think that is true about the entrance. It could just be that maybe you detach the garage and treat it as more of a carriage house, detached from the house. You have a bathroom that connects the two powder room. Maybe there's another way of doing that powder room such that the two are disconnected, which would give it, the garage would feel more like a carriage house, and then you would have the house more as a separate item, not so much connected with the garage. But again, the issue about the masking, I think, is, like I said, I almost want to get it more boxy, because I think when you look at the Spanish houses in your neighborhood, that Spanish style is a very strong form. They're very strong. They'll have a two-story facade, solid plaster with a few small windows in it, and that's the style. So anyway, that was it.
Hey, thank you. I think one of the main issues that has come up many times with both the neighbors and the architect and us has been the style of the architecture. I personally think that it's more of a Mediterranean style than a Spanish style. And truly, I don't think using exposed rafters and the rest of the elements being as more of a modern element really justifies as being being a Spanish style. So having said that, we're looking to me, I'm looking at a Mediterranean style home, more of a modern, has some elements there. I completely agree about the articulation of the building, and it has quite a bit of articulation pretty much all around the building. My suggestion is that if it is going to be a Spanish style, I think Mr. Garagos hit the issue on the head, and I think the point of looking at all these pictures that we have, the Spanish characteristic Spanish homes, authentic Spanish homes, do have very simple roof lines. They have very dominant forms, as you mentioned, and they're just basically boxes. They don't have articulations as much as this building has, which is fine. If it's Mediterranean, this is what it is. But if we are going towards the Spanish style, then I think we would just simplify that. And I think that there's definitely ways that we can address that. And one of the things that I think everybody was kind of pointing was the rear elevation. I think the reason that I think we're seeing this is how this is being broken up with two different roof lines and different facade elevations, whereas in the front you have one continuous roof line, and the reason is that we have this overview of this balcony that is walking through. So I think by just creating this function within the building, it's resulting in massing, a certain look of a massing. And I think the way that it's been addressed at the rear of the house, by stepping it back, I think just simply taking that and then mimicking that in the front and scaling down and basically still have the higher level and then scaling the entry down, I think that will definitely help. But I think at the end of the day, I think there are definitely other issues there that I think it needs to be addressed. I'm not sure if the Mediterranean is the look that the architect wants to go with, but I think if they do, I think the detailing needs to carry through. The east elevation is completely segregated than what the rest of the building is. We don't have any corbels, we don't have any of those details. And one of the features that I think these photos are really interesting is that any of these homes that are true, authentic Spanish revival homes, when they have exposed corbels, they don't really get wrapped into plaster and become just a decorative element. They're actual rafters that are coming out, and they have a very thin line that get attached to either a gable or a hip roof. And unfortunately, this one, it's the roof diagram. It's so complicated and it's so contemporary that I think it definitely governs for it to be a little bit more simpler. And the elevations, I think we can definitely have areas such as here, for example, where you have this window that is middle of the two floors. Well, this roof, it's already coming down. Why don't we just cut this and carry this through and make this a simpler, one simple roof, and you have plaster, you have this lower, or there are different ways of scaling this down. I don't have a problem with the scale of the building, I mean the mass of the building, but I think there are definitely ways we can minimize it, and I think either creating a lot more boxier feeling, but yet working with the contours of the lot. So I think by having this lot is flat, and it's stepped pads. We have a lower building, we have a level, and then we have higher, and then it's sloping back down. So I think by just simply working this out and being able to, this is a bathroom and the washer and dryers or a laundry room. I think by just lowering this down, you are already going to have this step down. So you're going to have these. Not only the articulation should be lessened on the facade, but it should be more on the roof lines, I think, and simpler roof line. And I think if that direction is taken, then I think it will be more true to the Spanish character rather than the Mediterranean. And if they do want to go towards the Mediterranean, then they should address it as being Mediterranean. And I think to me, as always said it, setting a goal as a guideline for yourself and setting telling yourself this is the style that I'm going to go with, and using that as your guide and being able to design that, I think it's always been really helpful to me and understanding the projects and also going through the design of the project. So I like the project. I don't have a problem with the size of the project. I don't have a problem with the three-car garage. I think it's a great point that you made about the three-car garage. And I think, I would like, and I do agree, is it west elevation?
It was getting confused.
Yeah, I'm always...
It's a north and south elevation.
Okay, so the south elevation, to me, I think it works out a lot better, and I think if they do carry that through the front, I think it would definitely help. In the front, I think the other thing that they can look at is just the plate line, if there's room to play with the plate lines rather than the actual roof line. Be able to create hip or gable and just be able to make those combinations in simpler forms. I think that would definitely help.
So if...
So landscape plan, there's a recommendation to have a landscape plan, which is missing.
Yeah.
So if it pleases the board, what we could do now is read back the comments, and then perhaps you can consider whether the comments are clear enough and specific enough, minimal enough that it can be approved with conditions. So I'll do my best to read off a complete list. Overall, what we feel we heard is that overall the mass scale and size of the project, the placement of the project on the site is appropriate. There was a positive feedback on that score. There was mostly discussion by the neighbors as well as the board regarding the style of the house. So I'll read off a few of those comments. A recommendation that was agreed upon is that the 3-car garage should have 3 separate doors. A good observation on the garage is its relationship to the entry should be better resolved so as not to be conflicting. However, that happens because I know there are there may be some challenges with the location of it. There was also a recommendation to consider removing that and making those 2 separate buildings. So that is that's for the applicant has choices in order to resolve that relationship. There seemed to be agreement that the rear facade is more successful than the front facade, and that was pointed out in a couple of ways. Board member Malekian pointed out that the roof in the rear has a step down and a step back, which separates the forms out in a way that's more beneficial for the scaling of that elevation, and that approach should be taken in the front. There was a fair amount of discussion about the articulation of the project. And in a nutshell, what we heard is that there is a choice between Mediterranean style, which is typically more articulated into smaller forms, or more traditional Spanish Revival style, which is present in the neighborhood and is more simplified as to the forms and the details, so that the architect or an applicant really must make a choice between these 2 approaches and follow those consistently through in the details and the massing overall. And we have a number of comments and clear direction as to very specific recommendations or considerations as how that can be achieved, such as the articulation of the archway openings. There was also discussion about the windows, whether they should be divided lights or not, and the sense that we read from the board's comments is that there is also a choice there. If I remember correctly, if it's a Spanish style, divided lights are more appropriate. If it's a more modern Mediterranean style, which is how we call it sometimes, the clear lights or non-divided lights would be appropriate. Other details that should be considered for a Spanish-style house might be an extended wood header over the major openings. So we did record a lot of those comments, which will be very useful, and we have the tape. The other consistent comment that we heard is that in the rear of the building, the balconies should be a stronger form rather than the more lightweight form recommended by staff.
Just
right.
I have a comment, too.
Go ahead.
Stephanie, and I really, for my fellow board members, I think you've been comprehensive there, but my only question is, since there are a lot of choices, and I'd sort of be interested in to know what the choices are, if we move this project along, the only time I would actually find out what the choices were is if I happen to drive by this home after it had been completed. So
Carter, I have a suggestion.
Yep. Okay.
I think as a body, I think we need to recommend our choice that we would want. I mean, this is what I would say, if as the applicant has stated in the application, that they would want to use or go with the Spanish Revival
Okay.
home. I would concur with that, and I think the neighbors would like to see that also. But I think the style that we are seeing right now, the way it's been proposed right now, to me, it's more of a Mediterranean. So I think by what the applicant is, the intent is, I think, of a Spanish, I would agree on that. I mean, I think...
You would agree on Spanish?
I think I would agree on that.
So if there's that clear direction from the board, just so that you know, staff is fully confident that we can implement that, and unless we see the applicant quickly rise to object, we will assume that we can work together on that if it pleases the board.
It's the last project, so we're done.
You mentioned that we have...
Well, let me open.
Sorry to forget. This elevation, east elevation, and other elevations, that east elevation, the roof line is totally different. We had these two choices, not that this is the same thing.
Okay.
We tried to have two different choices to see which one would you like.
Thank you. I think by just simply going towards the Spanish, making it much simpler volumes and more of a simpler roof lines, and going away from being more of a contemporary Mediterranean, I think everything will fall into place and it will work itself out. So I definitely think that Mr. Acopian is capable of doing that. So I think we're definitely going to see a very nice project when it comes.
And we'll probably make the recommendation for the two-piece tile too, as opposed to S-tile, I would think. Yeah. What kind of tile?
Two-piece tile, rather than the S-tile. And the two-piece tile is the barrel roof tile.
Mr. Chairman, we were just having a little sidebar here that, and we may make our comments public, that there is sort of an inclination to want to see the, Mr. Rafin, do you want to elaborate, or?
I don't know, is there another choice that at least we have after you make your changes and work with the architect? Is there a way for us to?
You can have it come back when we're done.
Return for redesign.
You can have her turn for redesign, but there may be
if there's so many
something...
recommendations, that's my point.
It's absolutely, of course, it's up to the board.
It's a first-time submittal, so we could come back again.
Because it's the same thing, but the difference is that we would have
It's a completely different style.
We would have a chance of seeing it again.
Absolutely. There is, I believe, another option, but I'd have to check this with our colleagues and maybe the city attorney. I believe that we can come back to you as an information item. So it's totally up to you.
I'd rather not. I think the direction has been really precise, and I think we can definitely, the next result would be definitely what we want to see, and if it is, then if you have any other suggestions, then we can go ahead and make those fine adjustments, and if not, then, you know, I just think there's too many things that it's not fair to you guys, to them, and to us. But again...
Well, then, in the spirit of that, I will move case number 2, PDR 2008-036 Apple, for redesign with the recommendations and notations that Stephanie so wonderfully enumerated.
That second?
Second.
And Mr. Zifrin said that?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Okay. Okay, roll call. Mr. Carter?
Yes.
Mr. Gergos?
Yes.
Mr. Zifrin?
Yes.
And Mr. Malikian?
Yes.
That'd be 4-0.
So I think we're done. I think we did all the hard work in the beginning. So if there's anything else?
Is there a motion to adjourn?
I would move that we adjourn.
I second.
Adjourn.
Thank you all.